Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Blade Bias. I am actually done checking out everything that I have been sent. I know I made that one video about the wing, but, this is actually the end of that streak. I don't have anything on the way currently, I don't think. So I want to take it back and talk about some more theoretical stuff and more discussion type stuff with you guys, because I don't want this channel to just become covering products every live-long day. I want to actually, talk to you guys and I want to learn and I want to help other people learn. It's going to be a whole thing. So, actually really quick, I did draw the chroma giveaway. That has been claimed. If you didn't know there was a chroma video or chroma giveaway, you should have watched the chroma I Spent a Week With video, because that's where I announced it. Anyway, or follow me on Instagram, or check out any of the links in the description. Anyway, I wanted to talk today about the concept of neutrality and why I have such a problem with it. In the past, you might have noticed that whenever I talk about a neutral balisong, I always try to, what's the word that I'm looking for? I always try to leave a footnote and say, I don't really like calling things neutral, but I would call this neutral. And I wanted to make a video fully explaining why. Because neutral is so subjective, much like everything else in this hobby, but I think neutral goes a little further into subjectivity. But considering that this is a discussion video, I don't want to just be talking at you. I want to see what you guys think in the comments. So leave a comment, give me your opinions, let me know what you think, preferably after you hear what I have to say, because some people like to comment before they even watch the video, and it's like, dude, I covered that in the video. So we got the whole collection out here today. My problem with neutrality fundamentally comes down to preference. What do I mean by that? That might sound a little confusing. Let's take two different people. I'm going to take myself, and I'm going to take Ty. I generally prefer, if you look at the Firefly or the Prisma, I generally prefer balisongs with a slight bit of blade bias, or at least not a ton of handle bias. Whereas Ty prefers a lot more handle bias, or at least he did when he was super into the hobby. So my big problem with neutrality, the idea of neutrality is that the handles and the blade don't carry more weight than each other. The balisong doesn't have a bias to the weight, to the blade or the handles. That's like the textbook term, but realistically that just comes down to preference. Because Ty likes handle bias. Let's take this a little step further. Ty likes handle bias. So if a balisong has a little bit of handle bias, he's going to enjoy that, and he is going to essentially ignore that. Whereas, since I like a little bit more blade bias in my knives, if a balisong has a tiny bit of handle bias, I am going to be more sensitive to that. So to Ty, a balisong with a slight bit of handle bias, since that feels more normal to him, might feel neutral. Whereas to me, since I am more sensitive to handle bias, since I don't like it as much, I would think that that doesn't feel neutral and it feels handle biased. And that fundamentally is the problem I have with calling things neutral. Because a lot of times people will call a balisong neutral that really isn't neutral. The one thing that I can think of, and I'm even guilty of this, and I will talk about that in a second, but the one thing I can think of that people generally agree is neutral is something like the squid trainer. But even then, I've seen people call it blade bias because, they prefer handle bias maybe, and then that little bit of blade bias is extra sensitive to them, so it doesn't feel neutral to them. It's a whole thing. And the reason that I got the idea for this is because way, way back when I started my main channel, I reviewed the Glider Arctic. And I said in that video, I'm not really sure what balance, I said something along the lines of, I'm not really sure what balance it has, but it feels neutral to me. Because the only other thing that I had was a Squiddy B, and squid industry is called the Squiddy B neutral, even though I would say the Squiddy B is a little bit handle bias. But again, that comes down to the whole, me being more sensitive to handle bias. It's a whole thing. And this is such a fascinating topic to me. But back when I started, I liked handle bias. I liked it a lot. My preference was far closer to what Ty's was. Actually, Ty and I think, had swapped preferences at that point, because that's back when he liked the Prisma, the Marin Light, which are very neutral / maybe a little blade bias balisongs. But I called the Arctic neutral when it objectively isn't, because I just didn't really mind handle bias that often. It felt normal to me. Whereas nowadays, handle bias doesn't feel normal to me. It's a little bit annoying. So I'm more sensitive to it, and a Balisong that has a little bit of handle bias, I'm probably less likely to call neutral. And it works the same way on the opposite end of the spectrum. Something like the Prisma without the weights at the end of the handles, I would say is ever so slightly blade biased. But I would almost call that neutral because I like that little bit of blade bias. I enjoy that. So it feels normal to me. I'm not sensitive to it. I'm willing to overlook it. A great example of this is the hognose. Now, Pyro got his hands on this thing, and he wasn't really a fan of it. I still stand by my opinions that it's okay, but Pyro really didn't like it. And he actually called it blade bias in his video, which, I mean, I don't entirely know if I agree, but if you go back and you watch my video, I don't remember what I said, but I think that would be really sad if I didn't actually say this, but I think I said that this felt like neutral-ish, maybe a little bit of blade bias, or maybe a little too little handle weight, because I'm less sensitive to blade bias. I would say it's kind of similar with this, where I run it with no weights, which I think some people who really like handle bias would try this and go, I don't like that. It feels a little blade biased. Whereas to me, it feels, I would say, very neutral. So that's the problem that I personally have with calling Balisongs neutral. This hobby is already so subjective, but at least when you call something blade biased or handle biased, there's a pretty good formula to figuring that thing out, whether you're testing chaplains or aerials or what moves it can do, what moves it can't do, where its weight's focused, all of that. But I really feel like you don't really do that with neutral, since everyone has different preferences that would make them more willing to overlook a tiny bit of that bias in their direction that they prefer. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. If I was just yapping for 8 minutes straight, then that sucks, and you guys have a lot to talk about in the comments. But that's kind of why I avoid talking about Balisongs as neutral, because it's so difficult to tell. I feel like the only way you'd be able to tell is taking off one handle, weighing it, and then weighing the blade, but even that isn't really representative of a neutral Balisong, because then you have to deal with distributions, and it's this whole thing. And I just generally try to stay away from the term unless the community generally agrees, like something like the Squid Trainer, or the company itself lists it as neutral. Like, I'm pretty sure BB Barfly might have said I equipped it with weights that make it neutral. And when I got this thing, I don't know if I would have called it neutral. It's a whole thing. That's the problem. That's the thing that I have against, like, using it myself. I don't really have a problem with other people using it. I do concede that there are people in this hobby that know more than I do and understand Balisongs more than I do. As much as I try to be really in tune with all of this, I think I am. I think I'm successful most of the time. But someone like Jack calling the hognose blade biased, I don't know. Hopefully he did say that. I think he said that. I watched his video like 4 times, so this isn't me just speaking out of my ass. It could just be me being dumb, though. But anyway, I want to know what you guys think. What are your thoughts? How can we figure out a way to talk about neutrality maybe a little bit better? At the end of the day, all of the concerns that I have are communicating Balisongs to people. Because as much as I make the comparison with like IEMs or something like that, we don't have frequency response charts that can map out how a Balisong flips. So it's all about the communication of them, and anything that we can do to make the communication of them better between reviewer or content creator and audience, because you can't flip a Balisong from the comfort of your home unless you buy it. And that's kind of the whole point of a review, is to see if you should buy it. Anyway, that's kind of why I came up. I was part of the committee, part of the group that came up with this weight distribution terms that I use now, like end weight and tip weight and all of that. And outer weight and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm so off topic. And for some reason, my heat is right above me, blasting down on me, and I'm wearing like an outdoor sweatshirt, so I'm sweating. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you thought, what you have to say on the topic, and if you have any ideas how to fix that, let me know. Let's try to have actual discussions. I know the Balisong community struggles with that sometimes because we think we're attacking each other and it becomes this whole thing. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.